It's Daniel with Classic Auto Appraiser, just giving you a quick run through of some of the tools that we use. I know we do these occasionally. It's not for everyone, but hey, if you love cars and you're looking at getting into appraising, these are some of the things I would recommend as online resources to help you along with your physical. I mean, I love books, for instance, but books are not going to stay up to date quite like live sales data. And a lot of big name places that can help you with that, like Haggerty, for instance, and their valuation tools. This one is a free resource if you're only going to use one part of the data. Honestly, if you're going to do it professionally, though, you should subscribe. You get their magazine, which is pretty cool, their print magazine, and you get some benefits like their towing service, etc., etc. Uh, but really, what we're looking at is, if you were to pay their subscription fee, like I said, I think it's $65. It might have changed, but you will get all the info, not just one data point, because I think they give you the number 3 rating. Um, Honestly, don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, I think it's the 3, good condition. But if you're doing this professionally, you want to be able to see the fair condition. You can click these little question marks, get the definitions on how they define these ratings, from a number 4 being the worst that they'll rate to a number 1 being the best. So we're just going to look at 1965 Ford Mustang, 2-door coupe, 8-cylinder 289, 271 horse, 4-barrel, high performance. So let's scroll a little bit and see. So, it shows you your price adjustments, which you should always be looking at. A really helpful tool if you're needing to backdate something. If someone had passed away and say you're doing a valuation on an estate, you're really going to want to be able to look at the data from, the last couple months, especially if they want you to use the values at the time of the date of death. So that's where this 3-year or even further back 5-year graph will help you see how the data has trended. And sorry, I'll scroll up. These numbers change too as you go across the points. So we're in April 2026, and we're going to be at Concourse, so you can watch it go through the high points and back into the dips. So that's very cool. I'll be honest, I don't use this for predicting when to buy or sell. I think it's kind of, and there are professionals that do this, and I get that, and they're very good at their job. Definitely not my cup of tea. For me, it would be foolish to look at buying, selling, and trading based off of this graph data. I buy stuff because I like it, and I honestly don't buy stuff regularly. I don't live in that tax bracket, and that's a-okay. So, but yeah, so this is one of my favorite tools, Haggerty, and then as I'll show you here in just a minute, the Classic Car Market Review are my 2 big sources, along with Classic.com, which I use for comping regularly. So here's a nice little 65, and you can tell it's a 65 by the honeycomb grill. You can also tell by the gas cap on the back, which isn't pictured. But in 66, it'd be all silver except for the Mustang emblem, which is colored. 65, it would be a kind of, I don't know if you call it chrome, but it's finished, the lip is, and it looks very pretty, almost chrome, and it has a black insert, and then it has the Mustang. So pretty neat stuff. They had different side ornamentations too as well. That helps you. This one doesn't have that. Not all of them do. And then there are obviously a couple different points too, like, the 260 Challenger V8 came out way before the 289. So you're looking at an early, some people call it a 1964 and a half. Ford is going to recognize it as a 65 whenever you do the decoding on it. But, the early 65 cars will be 260 V8 cars. Then we get up to the 289. Obviously, around 1968, they get to the 302, so they made that move. But there's all kinds of good info, past sales, which is cool, so you can come down here and find comps as well. I usually don't comp through here because the filtering isn't as good as Classic.com. That's not a jab at Haggerty. Haggerty does insurance, so it's amazing that they even make this data available, and I really enjoy it. And then, of course, you can go through here and see what different convertibles with different options, like 6-cylinder making 101 horsepower out of the 170, or 120 horsepower out of the 200. I really do think it's funny that we take for granted that your average commuter car has somewhere in the range of like 300 to 400 horsepower. I mean, it goes way up from there, but we've come a long ways from the days of 200 cubic inches giving you 120 horsepower. Not to mention single barrel carburetor. It's pretty cool. I mean, they're fun. They're not practical by any stretch of the imagination, but fun to play with. So, anywho, And then you can filter down if you want to see side by sides of how the values change. And I mean, noticeably, just right off the bat, convertibles are sort of in the middle. Coupes are always the low for the Mustangs. Fastbacks, I mean, they carry their weight in gold. And you get to the Shelby stuff, which is all going to be fastbacks for um, the really early stuff. It's good. They're the really beautiful cars in my opinion because it was form follows function. Shelby did not get really quote not that the GT350s aren't pretty, but he wasn't focused on making a quote pretty car. He's focused on making a performance oriented competitive car with the first iteration of the GT350, the 65 specifically, and then 66 gets a little bit more um, toned down if you want it to be a little bit more streetable, and then 67 they do the whole redesign where they differentiate the Shelbys from the Mustangs. They have their own look compared to a 67 Mustang versus a 67, whether it's a GT350 or the GT500, which was introduced then. Really cool cars, and I'm going off on a tangent, but you've got model descriptions, which is helpful, vehicle specs, all kinds of good stuff, and then they link their articles and videos at the bottom. But I feel like I've spent enough time on the Haggerty system. You can always go back up here, find a value. They've got watch list, yep, notification preferences, etc., etc. This is the collector car market review, or collectorcarmarket.com if you're just going to type it in as a URL. This is pretty awesome in my opinion because it's another grounded source with a lot of great points of data to consider. It doesn't have a graph, which is kind of unfortunate, but it does have values, and that's what you need. I think that's funny, a 0, because you don't see a number 4 288 GTO. Anyways, so go over here to condition, because this is the important thing to remember, is that there are different definitions for the different, I mean, it's always 1 to 4, at least for Haggerty and for the collector car market review, but you're going to see that they define them differently. They even name them differently. So Concours, whereas over here, let's pull up their number 1. It's excellent. So that's a good point of reference. And let's look at the same car just so I can show you the variances in data as well. 65 Ford Mustang. Okay. So we're going to go to Ford, go to 1965, and the Mustang. And we're not on GT, we are a Ford Mustang 2-door coupe. It's a base 8-cylinder, 289, 271 horsepower, 4-barrel, high performance. So that's, here we go, 271 horse. And that's the neat thing, is like they do it differently. Haggerty is going to parse it out to where you can just click on the engine options a lot of the time, which is nice for filtering. But this, they're going to do it by body style. So we've got 2-door convertible, 2-door fastback, 2-door hardtop. Nice little notes just to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and look at this a little bit. So if we've got a 2-door fastback, I might make this easier on myself. Let's do the 8-cylinder. 2V is 2-barrel, by the way. And if I've misspoke in this video, then just disregard. But when we think 2V versus 4V now, we think valves in an engine. You'll have a lot of pushrod engines. Actually, all your pushrod engines, they're going to be a 2-valver. And then you get to something that's single overhead cam, dual overhead cam, and you get anything from 2 valves all the way up to 5 valves, which is really an odd configuration. I can't remember who's done that. Who made a car with 5 valves per cylinder? Mitsubishi. I feel like I'm just not surprised by that. They made some pretty cool stuff. Again, a car I can't even say. Audi, Volkswagen Group, should have known that one. Anyways, neat stuff, but more common, it's 2 to sometimes 3, like the S197 Mustang GTs. The 4.6 went from a 2-valve in the SN95 to a 3-valve, and then they went to a 4-valve. But if you got the Cobra back in the SN95, which is the rounder nose, version of the Mustang. Probably the sleekest one they've made, with the exception of the S550 and the S650, except it got more hard nosed and flattened out, I think, because they were wanting a more muscular look. Again, rabbit trailing. But you could get a 4 valve back then in the Cobra, which is funny. So, kind of interesting how that stuff works. Um, and hopefully a Mustang guy watches this and completely tears me apart, because they are very specific. I say they as if I'm not one. So, Ford Mustang. And see, so we can do it this way. Submodel, we want a base. We're going to do a coupe, and let's do. Look at that. There's that Challenger 260 V8. Challenger, the name of the engine, not Challenger the car. And that it's funny how many of these things get reused, and it can definitely get lost in translation if you're just at a car show talking about the Challenger V8 and a Mustang, and people go, "That's not a Hemi," or "That's not a 440," or "That's not a whatever." So 289. We'll do the 200 horse 2-barrel. All right, so our fair condition is 13.2, and their number 4 for the hardtop is 5,850. Oof, man. Again, kind of keep in mind the condition guidelines, though. So if their number 3 is a good, and you come down here, they recognize concours, but it's a 1+. Vehicles have been treated to a very, very expensive concours quality, frame off, no expenses spared, nut and bolt restoration, and do not get driven. They can often command higher prices than the CCMR standard number 1 value. See, so they even recognize that, whereas Haggerty, they give you a concours condition valuation. So 38,000. So if you treat this like the actual number 1 over here for CCMR, you get a little bit closer. So we're back hardtop, convertible fastback, hardtop, which is the coupe. 26.4, number 1 for CCMR is probably the number 2. And you can try to reconcile this by the definitions. Could win a regional car show, drives like new. They even have more in-depth definitions that they'll go into. Might be a former number 1 vehicle that's been driven or aged. The photos, I feel, help sometimes, although some of these look a little bit more worn than I would expect. I mean, obviously the Concours one, that looks absolutely Concours. And again, this is subjective. This is kind of the tough part. If you're going to be an appraiser, you just need to be able to logically defend and show your work. Like in math class, they're going to want to know how you got to that point. So you're going to have to define your definitions, or align with one of the mainstream ones. Admittedly, we usually use the CCMR ones just because they're a little bit more in depth. That's, again, it's not knocking Haggerty. It's usually how we would define them. Extremely presentable vehicle. This is the very good showing, minimal wear, or a well-restored vehicle. Runs and drives smooth and tight, needs no mechanical or cosmetic work. All areas chassis not required have been fully detailed. Beautiful to look at, but clearly below a number 1 vehicle. So that's nice. It gives you a very comprehensive overview of what the definition is, and that's really what we want to have when we are defending our points, which we don't have to do. Usually that's if we just get asked questions. It's never like courtroom TV drama, but if we do have to defend something that we've put together, called as an expert witness, which is, it's kind of fun. It is, because you get to talk about what you do, talk about how you do it, and hopefully just be reasonable and cool-headed and level-headed and explain it, because no one's trying to get you with a gotcha question, generally. Maybe there's some lawyers out there looking forward to that, but I don't, at least the ones I've worked with, that has not been the majority. They really just want to do their job and do it well, and that means they're going to be thorough, and they're going to ask questions, and everyone I've ever worked with has been very respectful of me, opposing counsel included. So, yeah, just another cool aspect of the job. But yeah, so looking at this, you can see that there's some different valuation numbers than Haggerty, and it makes sense. They're going to have different data streams. Haggerty stuff is usually reported in from insurance, whereas I know the CCMR one uses a lot of sale values, and I know that Haggerty also does that because they have broad arrow auctions. If you didn't know, Haggerty has been buying up things. It's interesting to watch. It kind of looks like a buying spree sometimes, but you know what? They're publicly traded. They have, I would imagine, pretty good market value. Again, if they don't and you watch the markets, absolutely grill me in the comments because that's not something I do. So just let me know. But they do have a lot of neat assets and desirable assets, I would say, at this point. They have a great media team. Um, Jason Camisa, he used to write a lot as an automotive journalist, and now he's doing a lot of their videography as a host, so that's cool. But getting back to how we look at things while doing the appraisals. So last but not least, classic.com, and there are other sources outside of this. These are my big three. Very American of me, I know, to have a big three like Ford, Chevrolet, Dodge, or Chrysler, however you want to pin that last one. And what I like about classic.com is that you can do something as basic as type in 1965 Ford Mustang. Oh, and you can misspell it and it'll still find it. We're going to look at the hardtop because that's what we've been doing. I like how they define first generation as 64 to 66. I mean, and it's interesting how they categorize things because different places do different things. Because admittedly, a lot of books will clump the 1965 or 64 and a half if they want to spin it that way, all the way up to 73 before you get to the Mustang 2, which is a completely different chassis. Because really, yeah, the car gets stretched and it grows, but it's still the Falcon architecture, and it's still built around what the Mustang started as on April 17th, 1964. Yeah, I mean, even before then. You know, that's just the introduction date. So we're going to look at Mustangs, first generation. We are looking at 65, so we can, again, parse it down again. Averages are nice, other than the fact that the highest high, and that's just a listing, sale prices are in green. I mean, here's your key down here. So sold, high bid, for sale, last asking price. And there's the average sale line, which is fun to watch and see it go up and down and up and down. You can filter things out, like if we just wanted to look at automatic cars, which there's a lot more of them. It'll get rid of the manuals. And apparently you're going to have to hit see results. And so, see, that's a change right there. And there's back with all of them. Kind of neat. We can also get rid of, what am I looking for? Status. So we don't want to see stuff that hasn't sold. We might not want to see stuff that's for sale, especially if you're comping. You probably want to see stuff that's sold. So let's see the 65 results for the ones that have sold. And this is neat. So you've got your top sale at 66,000, the most recent 27.5, and the low sale at 7,600. That just goes to show you how different Mustangs can be by their equipment, but also what condition does to a vehicle. So let's look at the high and the low. So we'll start with the high, 66,000, Barrett Jackson. That's kind of expected. We'll go to the auction website and look at this one. It's a pretty little Mustang, white vinyl top, GT lights, badging. The stripes look good. Deluxe wheels. 3-speed automatic. And you can't forget, they get a much nicer gauge cluster for a 65. And it looks pretty good, all things considered. I believe that's the lighting. I wouldn't even say that's discoloration. There might be a little bit and a little tear up there. That's probably the one thing. Again, this is for if you want to become an appraiser. You're going to be such a nitpicker. It's going to be hard to look at cars and not notice the flaws. Which is the really nice thing about, for me, getting out and driving. I love cars because I love driving them. I love using them. And it's funny because I don't own anything worth talking about when we're talking about concours cars or cars worth restoring. And maybe part of that is because if I had a car that was perfect, which would be beautiful and amazing, I'd be too scared to drive it. I would never drive it. And as much as you notice the little things in your job, I don't think they bother you nearly as much with your own cars because you know the flaws, you know where you live, budget wise, and what you can afford. So it's just something you make do with. So yeah, this one, pretty nice little car. A little bit of paint missing on where the trunk meets right there next to the end caps. But it looked like it had its original. Yeah, that's cool. Phil Long Ford, Colorado Springs. Pretty neat. It definitely has the pony interior. Even though I can't. Oh, there we go. Yeah, the door panels looked like it did, so the seats were probably that way too. So great little car. That's honestly maybe a little on the high side, I would think, for a coupe. But if and I didn't read about it, so let's be fair. But if it is a Survivor, which I would be amazed. That looks like restored to me. It looked way too nice to be a Survivor. But hey, you know what? Let's go read. Reading is the magic key to take you where you want to be, C4 automatic. Professional repaint in aqua and chrome. Bright work in good condition. The interior's been completely renewed. So, restored or at the very least refreshed. But it is cool that they kept a lot of the original emblems and that dealership emblem. That's cool. So much better than a sticker. They should bring that back. Although I guess some people wouldn't want holes punched in their cars. It could still be 3M tape. It's fine. Let's bring it back. All right, so let's get the low point of 7,600. So let's go find that right there. That little guy doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say he's an inline 6 car and automatic. Yeah, that makes sense. And on BAT, which it brings a different crowd. This is accessible to literally anyone with a Bring a Trailer account. Barrett Jackson, obviously, you don't have to be there to put in a bid, but it's a different crowd. At the very least, you've got some money set back. You know exactly what you want. And, whoever bought this knew exactly what they wanted, but, crooked horse in the grill. Um, and a lot of you may hate this, but I kind of find cars with wear and tear to have some character. It's kind of charming. Tells a little bit more of a story than a rotisserie restoration. Okay, admittedly, some cars deserve rotisserie restorations, but not everything should be restored, in my opinion. And to the hot rodders out there, like the guys that I can't remember if it's a '67 or '8, but took that '67 Mustang and put it on a C5 Corvette chassis. The people that got mad at you, they have no idea how hard that is to do, and they also don't know that that car was so far gone. Like that was the best thing that could happen to it. That Mustang is living a new life. It's faster than it ever would have been from the factory, and people are enjoying it. So, again, little tirade there. Midden, Louisiana. See, this is cool. This is what I like about Bring a Trailer as opposed to some of the bigger auctions like Barrett Jackson or Meekum. You get a lot more info. You get a story, you get what the people have. And it's not to say that there always is going to be a lot of info. Look at that single exhaust. I love it. 13-inch steel wheels. So, man, I bet it's hard to find tires for that thing. So, faded carpet, blue interior. Man, I dig the blue. That is a white car with blue interior. My dad actually had one of those. That underdash AC unit, some sort of aftermarket radio from maybe the 80s ish. This is fun. Man, it's not clean, but it's not rusted to pieces either. It's pretty good. That could be cleaned up. Um, straight 6 with an AC compressor. That's insane. Single pot master cylinder, so it's drum brakes. It is not power drums, so there's no power brake booster. Wow, that was hard to find behind it. Sometimes words are tough. 120 horsepower, baby. This is a great little car. But yeah, just fun to see the high and the low. Again, they're a billion different ways to find exactly what you're looking for. And yes, I speak hyperbolically. A billion? I don't know about that, but a lot of different ways to find the cars that you're looking for. Let's close this out. And Classic.com is really just the best landing place to find them as you're going through and trying to find cars that match the one that is your subject car that you're doing the appraisal on. And you'll find everything from modified vehicles to very stock vehicles, like that lowest sale value one and the highest sale value one. Both of those are either restored to original or have survived for a long time as what it is. Just my 2 cents too. The equipment on this one's obviously more desirable. I'd rather have a V8 than a straight six, but I would take this car in a heartbeat if I had known it was for sale for $7,600. Especially if the undercarriage was good. Which, speaking of, I'm gonna check because I don't think anyone's really gonna care that's listening to this. And that really is, in my opinion, the big killer on a ton of cars is metalwork. That's not terrible, but it's usually not a great sign when you see stuff collected. And I'd love to see lower down, just because that's where most of the grime and water, etc. Yeah, see, it's already not looking great. Got some rust. But at this price point, I would expect, quote, some rust. Not too bad. At least that spare is useful. Oh, good. Close-up shots. I still want one down, because the problem is there's a dip right here, and I really want to see how the bottom of this quarter is. Bottom of the quarters on Mustangs are good to check. You always want to check the cowl. They rust like nothing else when something gets in there and traps the water because the drains are clogged. And then you get a rusty cowl, firewall, and possibly front floor pan, depending on how long it's sat and how much water's gathered. And if it's never addressed, it's usually a pretty rusty Mustang. So this one's not bad. Whoever got it for $7,600, I hope you're enjoying it. It looks like quite the sweet little car. Okay, I said undercarriage photos though, so I need to stop just scrolling mindlessly. Here we go. Yeah, that's not the worst I've seen. I mean, no one likes to see rust, but again, price points being price points, you've got to recognize. And this would be good, honestly, to go back to our definitions. So looking at this, you see some rust under there. You can see that it's not just, that's, some of it's deeper than surface. At least it looks like it might be in color. That's very red. I know it's blurry, but it's darker too, which is usually not a great sign. So let's keep looking and see how much it gives us. Again, overall, I'm pretty impressed. Of course, I'm going to say that because I just dream about $7,000 60 Mustangs that aren't returning to the earth, especially if you spent plenty of time on Facebook Marketplace. It is the place where junk is sold as treasure. Let's pull up that condition again. So that little guy, I would likely identify as a 4. Although it's saying the rust should be minimal and not in any structural areas, which, in all fairness, the Mustang is a unibody car, so the floor acts as part of that structure, giving it rigidity. You get a front set of frame rails and a rear set that are connected by the floor pans. Conversely, this vehicle may be fairly presentable, but needs moderate mechanical work. So they leave some room for interpretation. I would still probably go with a 4 because it's not in need of complete restoration. So number 4. So according to Collector Car Market Review, that was a little bit more than maybe what should have been paid for a 4. But if you look at something like Haggerty and look at their number 4, although their fair condition stuff is nicer generally. Which is kind of hard to tell. Haggerty, if you're listening, I would love more photos. And I know CCMR doesn't even have photos, but they have a little bit more to their description, I feel like. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Anywho, let's get back to classic.com and let's point out one of their biggest features, in my opinion, because this is nice, but if you're really trying to dial something in, you're gonna go to saved vehicles. You're gonna add a vehicle. Look at all these vehicles that I do not own. I've got more than 16 pages of them. I'd like to go ahead and thank classic.com for making such an awesome system, letting me use it because it is free. So feel free to use it, and employing me for that short time where I got to do some really cool consignment stuff. That was pretty fun. Got to sell some Mustangs I'll probably never sell ever again, just because the opportunities were pretty wild. And I got to learn a lot, so that was really neat. So 1965 Ford Mustang. Coolest thing about this is that you're really not at the mercy of, I mean, it's still what it can find, but this is where it matters, being able to filter down everything. So let's get into the model variants. We'll change it up a little bit. How about that? Let's do pace cars. And let's do a pace car with a C code V8. Was the original engine changed? Yes. And we'll leave that blank just to give it a little bit of options. We'll leave manual, automatic, open. They're all rear wheel drive. Left hand drive. And should be white. I think the interior is white on them too. Guess we'll find out. Or maybe blue. This is really neat too. So you can do original and highly original, which we're doing pace cars. You're going to expect that. I'd honestly be surprised to see a custom pace car, unless it is a replica of a pace car that someone has customized. And you can read these definitions for yourself, but they really give you some nice drop downs. And you know what? We're going to go with modified, a little bit of an in-between, see if we've got any pace cars like that. There may not be. We'll put 150,000 for the miles, put the true mileage unknown, and just watching. So we save, and it gives you a comp number, which is nice. You can edit it down from there if you want. It'll take you back to the previous pages. Add details if you want as well, or you hit finish, and it'll spit out this nice little page, giving you a range, giving your location, the odometer reading, and that's the location of the car, really and truly. Originality, status, and then here's a in-depth breakdown of what we put in under the specs page, and then here's the comps it has that are relatable, or at least the ones it perceives to be relatable. And each of those individual comps will be found below. Again, here's more filters to narrow it down even more if we wanted to. Kissimmee, Florida, so that's, yeah, Mecum. Oh, and here's one from Bring a Trailer. I was about to say, and all of them were sold on big auction sites, which Bring a Trailer is, but let's see what this one looks like, because it'll have the most photos and the most info. You go down to history down here, click on the past auction, go to the website. $87,000. Wow. 2023. Later spent time at the Mustang Museum in Concord, North Carolina. Well, that's cool. 260 cubic inch V8. Probably should have known that. White interior with blue carpeting. Isn't that wild? Blue dash. Or sorry, dash pad. White instrument panel. Or I guess black instrument panel, instrumentation. Still has the Falcon based one, which I love that one. I know a lot of people like the speedometer dial as opposed to the sweeping gauge, but this is a beautifully done restoration. Mmm. Yeah, man. But it's kind of neat because you can find just about anything through classic.com in that saved vehicles list. We'll do something different too. We've done Mustangs. Let's do a 2009 Nissan. What do you think it's going to be? Yeah, a GTR. Close out all this. Got the GTR, GTR Nismo, and the premium. Let's do the standard GTR. And we'll do changed engines. We're going to leave all this open just because I want to see as many custom GTRs as it will show me. So we're really not going to pare things down in these areas. Look at that range. I can only assume this is a clapped out GTR with over 100,000 miles on it, or over 150,000 miles on it, and this is about as nice as you'll find them. But assumptions being assumptions, I might be a complete fool. Oh man, look at that color. That's great. So you get some interesting body kits and spoilers, some sweet color combinations, and being that we chose custom as opposed to just modified, I'm assuming these are all really built cars. Any day now. Yeah, let's see what we can... Dealer's website. Oh, man. It's not going to show us. I guess it's sold. Although, boy, they've got some crazy inventory. The Cobra. That's not what I expected here. That's kind of crazy. With a Plymouth Sundance. 1,275 horsepower. Good gosh. They're those GTR people. Those are the best GTR people, by the way. If you're keeping your GTR stock, I hope it's the most sought after stock piece of Nissan history on the planet, but I always will have a thing for the modified GTRs. Somehow we've lost the rabbit in all this, that this is about you wanting to appraise, but, you know, when we're talking about GTRs, you just have to drool over them. So this is cool. You get to see a lot of different cars built a lot of different ways, finding hopefully something that resembles your comp. And since we started with 65 Mustangs with 2-barrel 289s, and somehow we've made it to 1,200 horsepower GTRs, I'd say we've pretty much not done that. So yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for tuning in. That's pretty much all I've got planned for today. I'm going to try to do a little mini series or talk through of how we do our jobs or certain cars that I think are interesting or certain situations and how to navigate them, because that's probably the other half of this job, is just learning how to work with people well. Because if you are a business owner, you have to be able to do that or you will suffer at the very least. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'm going to look at this GTR and let y'all go.